Welcome to Equilibrium Echoes, the podcast where we delve into the transformative power of your inner world on your relationships. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker. Join me as we unlock the secrets of emotional equilibrium and dig deep into the tools and insights needed to foster healthier, more fulfilling relationships in ways that feel safe and authentic. Welcome back to Equilibrium Echoes. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker, and today I have with me a very special guest, Donna Wallace. Donna is going to tell us just here in a minute about all of the things that she has going on. But I want to tell you, I did a little preview chat with her a couple of weeks ago, and I'm very excited to dig into some things with her. We're going to talk about when you can kind of sense and you feel, you know, that your life is not headed the way you want to go. Like you feel that impending sense of there's a train wreck coming in my future. How do I get off of this track? That's what we're going to talk about today. I think that's going to be very helpful. And so Donna, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you kind of got to where you are today.
I began my spiritual journey many moons ago when I was in my teen years. So that was over 25 years and maybe closer to 30 at this point. I grew up in a household of, my family were really atheists actually. And so spirituality or religion was not a part of our household. And I happened to have a family friend who stepped in to comfort me at one point in time as a teenager and gave me Reiki on my shoulders. And it was the first time that I just had this sense of being at home in my body, being at home in this life, being at home on this planet. And that sense of love and care and the energy that was coming through Alyssa, just as I said, felt like home. And it was the beginning of a journey for me that I couldn't look away from. I had to find out more. I just knew I was meant to learn how to do Reiki and then ultimately became a Reiki master. I love that many of us have our journey start with Reiki, actually. It's often an introduction or a turning point when we get introduced to it. And there have been many turning points like that through my life where I've chosen particular, when you get to crossroads and, so I did yoga teacher training, and I was at a crossroad. Will I pursue yoga teaching or will I go down the healing path? And I chose the healing path and, different points where, I decided after my daughter was born, I just had this impetus, like, I've always wanted to do my energy healing work as a business, and I had just done it on the side as a hobby for many, many years, and all the while doing other sort of corporate jobs and different work, and had that feeling of emptiness, like I wasn't fulfilled or I wasn't doing the thing that I was meant to be doing. And so when my daughter was born, actually what happened for me was that another crossroad, another choice, like, will I step into this? And it felt like in some ways my soul was speaking so loudly to me that I didn't really have much choice. I needed to give this a go because I just knew that I couldn't get to the end of my life and have regrets, Alyssa, of giving it a chance. And so I opened up my business, and for a little while I worked part-time in my corporate job, which was really an amazing job and a beautiful career path laid out for me. Like, it was, a wonderful career and a great option as well. But I knew on the inside that it didn't light me up. It wasn't for me. And so, I did both for a while. I had young kids. I was absolutely sleep deprived, but I can tell you I had never felt so fulfilled in my whole life doing this Dharma work, this soul work of mine, which, I call energy healing. And, my energy healing business exploded as I opened the doors. It was unbelievable. My books filled up for months in advance, and ultimately I left that corporate job, and the rest is history. So that was about 8 years ago now. Next month it'll be 8 years ago that I've had that business for, and really that was a point of that moment in time of choosing to start my business was one of those potent crossroads again. Like I said, but it really was the beginning of me following my intuition in my everyday life and choosing how I navigate my life based on my intuition and really committing to it. Like, I didn't sort of realize this at the time, but looking back, I can see that actually that was the big turning point, was that I was going to follow my intuition in making all of my decisions, the little decisions, the big decisions. And my life has taken on some really unexpected and magical twists and turns since then. So that's a bit about including starting another business, which was a few years ago, creating custom made jewellery for people's souls that also really activate your energy field, and some amazing stuff there. So I think that my mission, Alyssa, like what I've really gotten clear on, and it's only been by doing the actual work and doing the work with thousands of clients over the years, is that my mission here is to help people switch their lights on. Yeah.
Yeah, so often we go through our lives kind of on autopilot and we don't really even think about other options, right? Like, or we choose something based on finances or based on practicality or based on whatever. And it's not really the thing that lights us up and gets us excited to go through our lives, like waking up every morning with purpose, right? We just wake up because it is what we do. And, it's really a whole different experience when you can do something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
So
it is a different way of living.
Yes, for sure. So when we talked, you one of the things that really caught my attention was you were talking about sort of feeling like your life is headed for a train wreck. And, I think a lot of us can relate to that. Like, we find ourselves in situations, maybe it's not our entire lives, maybe it's a relationship or a job or a specific situation where we just have this feeling like, oh, this is not going to end well. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think for most of us, we feel kind of helpless, in many cases, to do anything about it. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how did that play out? How has that played out in your life? And what have you sort of discovered about how to reroute that train before it goes off the tracks completely?
Well, let's be honest. I've had a couple of train wrecks, Alyssa.
Right. We all have,
so
I think.
We all have, and a couple of mine were pretty disastrous. And, I learned a lot from that. I learned so much from that. But what I can see as patterns were a couple of things. One, I was an emotional wreck and I was pretending like I was fine, but every sort of 6 months or so, I would just sort of fall apart. And it was an inner experience that my now husband had an inside view of that, and maybe a couple of my closest friends, but really people wouldn't have known on the outside just what a state I was in. And I think that this can be a really hidden experience for a lot of people: emotional turmoil, feeling really overwhelmed with our emotions, or feeling quite depressed or anxious and things. It can be a very inner experience that not a lot of people see on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
But so I had that sort of going through my life, probably, particularly from my teenage years. I would say I had an undiagnosed eating disorder. I was looking for love in all the wrong places, Alyssa. And if you want to talk about heading towards a train wreck, like, that'll do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Alongside that, I was seeking the answers to figure out how to basically fix myself or fix these, emotional issues that I had. And a lot of that stemmed from physical abuse that I'd experienced, and also sexual abuse that I later experienced. That was another train wreck moment. That all happened because I was, again, looking for love in all the wrong places, but I thought that there was someone out there who would be able to save me. And this is very unconscious programming. I had a feeling like if only or a thought, like if only I could find the right person who understood me, who could help, who could see my gifts, because I knew I was intuitive, who could recognize who I truly was, then maybe they could help me like bring that to the foreground. And that was a very slippery slope, Alyssa, because that major issue of abuse that I experienced was actually with a healer and mentor of mine. So when you talk about a train wreck, like looking back, I can see all the signs there. Yes, like I was emotionally vulnerable and unstable, and I was looking for love in all the wrong places, and I thought that I didn't have the answers within myself. Now, as culturally, Alyssa, we are kind of primed, programmed to look for external things to resolve our inner issues. Yes, like
Yes. Yep.
from a
We really are.
capitalism point of view, from a patriarchal point of view, like we are not taught to stand in our power. We are taught to go and change the job or end the relationship and find another one. Or but then what happens is when we are looking externally for those things to kind of like validate us or get the love that we need, or in my case I was looking for someone who could see my gifts and help me bring them out, that is a very personal perspective, but I know that like the wider community can relate to this, because all the people that come to me have some sort of repeating patterns that they can't quite get a hold of, and they're often trying to fix it by like dating, and then they're continually having the same patterns in dating relationships, like they're getting treated really poorly and they're looking for that validation in the relationship, or they keep changing jobs because they think the jobs and the people are the problem. But let's be honest, Alyssa, if we keep going down that path, it is a train wreck waiting to happen, and double whammy honesty is that we're the common denominator. It's us.
Exactly.
And that is a hard pill to swallow.
Right. So what is the first step, do you think, for people? Because I think so often when we're trapped in these cycles and we're looking for love and we're looking for validation, we often don't realize that that's what we're doing. Like I could see how people could be listening right now and they're like, well, that's not what I'm doing. Like I just meet bad men, right? Or I've just had a series of difficult bosses, right? So how do you really stop that and look at your life and say, well, is it me? Like, could this be me? How do you get to that point where you're like able to look at things a little more objectively and figure that out?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alyssa. I think that we can start unraveling the threads with a couple of things. And that is, first of all, becoming aware of a repeating pattern that we have. So say that you have a repeating pattern of bad relationships or finding the bad men, inverted commas, out there. That is a repeating pattern. And whether you think it's them or you, if you're listening to this and this conversation is resonating, then this is your first aha moment, right? So having a repeating pattern is a first like thread that we can pull on. Secondly, if you have a desire to change things in your life, if you know that there are things that really aren't actually working in your world, even if you don't know how to change it, just that desire alone, like knowing that life probably gets to be better than what this is the next thread to pull on. So if you, like, I know that I had that for many years where I was like, I don't feel great. It looks like there are other people out there having a much happier, like fun experience of life than I am. I wonder if if that is real, or B, if that's possible for me. And so it is that getting curious and listening to that inner voice of something else is available, something else is possible for you. If you can identify those two things, that there's some repeating patterns and you want to change things and you have this gut feeling like there's something else available, then that's a really wonderful place to start.
Yeah, I was just thinking while you were saying that, like I you see these stories, for example, of these children who are chronically ill, and they're the happiest, most delightful people, right? Or people that have cancer and have this really positive outlook. And I was thinking while you were saying that, like, if those people who have these incredibly difficult circumstances can find joy and be happy, then it would stand to reason that the rest of us can too. Like,
Yeah.
you know, because you were saying, like, you know, if you're looking around going, oh, this seems to work better for everyone else than it does for me. And a lot of that does often come down to self-evaluation and reflection and doing that inner work on ourselves.
Yeah, it does. It does, Alyssa. What I hear and what you're saying is that actually it's not about the circumstances. It's
Right.
about, because this is the thing, life dishes us out all sorts of interesting, weird, and wonderful cards, yes? All sorts of things happen to us. But at the end of the day, you know, this is why I love healing work, is because it helps you process and integrate all the things that happen to you and take all of the good things that can give you and leave the challenging impacts behind, and then continue to navigate life. Like, so you're strong enough and capable of dealing with anything that comes your way. It's not actually about having to have cultivated the perfect, you know, inverted commas life, or have the perfect set of circumstances to be happy. No, we get to have like the fullness of life and have all the things happen and have this inner experience of a really beautiful baseline level of happiness. You know, we just wake up and there's this joy, and that's kind of what you were talking about before in terms of waking up feeling like you're on purpose in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of the things that can so easily derail us when we have a lot of negative experiences is this victim mentality. Like, all of this is happening to me, right? And I'm not in control of this. I just have to take what life hands me, and life has given me lemons, and, you know. So let's talk about that, like that victim mentality, because I think, honestly, if there's any one thing that keeps people from moving forward in this inner work, that keeps people from, you know, doing the work and the mindset and the healing to improve their circumstances, it's I didn't cause this happened to me, and I can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
And you are clearly someone who's had a lot of those difficult experiences. So how do you overcome that and get out of that victim mentality and start seeing things differently?
And honestly, it's a process, Lisa. So it's it's a real process. And there's something I want to acknowledge in what you're talking about in terms of that victim mentality, or feeling like we're getting dished up a lot of lemons, as you say, from the universe. Sometimes when we experience a lot of challenging things, it can feel like they layer one on top of the other. So we're not just dealing with, you know, one issue of a broken down relationship, and then, you know, someone close to us dies and we're dealing with that grief, or, you know, we have a challenge at work. We're now dealing with a cumulative effect of all of those things laid on top of each other. And I feel like when that happens, that's when it can be really challenging to unravel it all, or feel like you've got any agency in your life, because it's this cumulative effect of trauma, for want of a better word, if you like. So that going in and doing that deep healing work on all the different things that you've experienced is really crucial, because it basically undoes the layering effect. It separates them out in some ways, so it doesn't just feel like it's completely overwhelming and unachievable to clear, like how heavy and painful all of those experiences are. So when we can do that healing work and we start to clear the charge around all of those instances, the different things that have happened for you, what naturally happens is we're clearing away all the gunk, like, inside of you. So you start to feel stronger. And when you start to feel stronger, what happens is you step into taking more responsibility for your life. Now, that sounds like not a fun thing to do, but actually taking responsibility for our lives is such a fun thing to do, because then we start to feel like we've got agency. I don't think control is the right word, because we can't control anything, but we can start to move into a space of co-creation with the universe around what is it that we want to create in our lives, and what feels very, soul aligned, or what does our intuition say about which path we want to go down. So this is what I see happening with my clients, is that we do we do so much healing work, and then automatically what happens is we build a foundation within you where then you're ready to take steps to consciously create what it is that you want in your life. So that is a deep process, really, of how do you get out of a state of feeling like you're a victim and getting into a place where you feel like you're in the driver's seat. It is a process, and it's healing, and it's doing the stuff, right? Doing that inner work, if you like. But it's beautiful because it frees you up, so then you can really be in that driver's seat again.
Yeah. It changes the whole game, doesn't it? Not that life is a game, but when you are able to kind of, like you said, put yourself back in the driver's seat and stop feeling like you just have no choice but to accept whatever comes your way, but you get to create the life that you want, and make choices for yourself. And some of the things that happen to us, we don't have any control over, right? Like if somebody dies, there's nothing we can do to control that. But what we can do is realize that we've got to do some healing work with that. We've got to let go of that, process those emotions, go through the process of grief, learn however that affects our lives, how the changes that we need to make to adapt to that. And realizing that, I think a big piece of this for a lot of people is you may not be able to control the circumstances, but you always have some measure of control over what happens in your own head, in your own body, in your own life. Yeah. And not giving into that sense of like, well, I can't do anything about it. This is just how it is. It feels very overwhelming. It does. Yes, and it can feel very overwhelming because some of the circumstances we genuinely can't change. But there's also an aspect of this where some of the circumstances that we experience, things that happen to us, are a result of what we've created, right? Like they're the natural consequences
yes,
the consequences of our actions, right? And a lot of times I have found the consequences of my actions don't even look like what I thought they were going to look like. But there's also that level of like taking responsibility. Well, I did this. This is the consequence. This is how I'm, so many layers here. But I guess what I'm getting at is we always have some control over our responses and reactions. So how do we start
talk and to me about challenging this sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? So if we
go ahead.
I feel like that's an easy thing to say in some ways and a harder thing to bring into our experience. So say let's take grief as an example. Every experience that we have wants to cultivate something within us. But if we are trying to shut that grief down, just, stuff it down in our chest and our heart spaces, or sweep it under the rug. I've actually just got to organize the funeral and I've got to get through this, and then I've still got to run my life, and I've got to take care of, if your mum's passed, you've got to take care of your dad, or you still got to manage the household, the kids and all of the things and work and all of that. It's really easy to just push that aside. But then the problem is that adds into one of those layers that I was talking about. So it'll stay there needing to get resolved at a later time. when we can allow the process of grief to do what it's meant to do, okay, so hear me out. Every emotion or everything that we experience, there is gold that sits within that if we can allow, or if we understand what the process is. And sometimes we need that head understanding, that intellectual understanding, to be able to be like, okay, what I'm going through is normal and I need to see this out, and it's okay for me to feel all these feelings. From my perspective, grief is it rips your heart open. It can crack. Sometimes it feels like it's cracking your heart open. Sometimes it feels like it's smashing your heart open. Sometimes it feels like two hands and pulling it, laterally across your heart space. If we can honor that big emotion, all the emotions that come with grief, because let's be honest, there can be a huge array of them, like a lovely buffet, take your pick. If we can allow that process of it ripping our hearts open, then what that grief leaves us with is present to the love that we have for that person who's passed, B, an opportunity to still connect with them when they've passed over, C, hang on, how many letters are there in the alphabet? Because I reckon I've got a few benefits.
Yeah, that's really powerful to kind of start looking at big emotions and negative experiences or painful experiences. Maybe negative isn't even the right word. Painful experiences as having something to teach us, and as, leaving something behind that is valuable and precious. Right.
Yes.
And so and this is not an either or thing. This is a both and kind of thing. We have to go through that process of sitting with those big painful emotions and letting them do the work that they need to do. And at the same time, take responsibility for our actions towards other people while we're sitting with those big emotions, right?
Yeah. And
for example,
go ahead. Sorry, go.
No, you go ahead.
That's right. And sometimes it is, first of all, knowing that you're capable, like that you can hold those big emotions, because some people come to me and they're like, I don't know if I can do this, Donna. I don't know that I can be with this level of grief or whatever they've experienced. And it's something to learn. You can learn that you have the capacity to hold this, and you can learn how to navigate feeling those emotions without shutting down. At the same time, it can be really helpful to just flag with the people around you who are going to be exposed to this, like communication 101. Hey, honey, I am like in the depths of my heartbreak and grief over XYZ at the moment. I just need some space to process this. Or can you give me a hug while I'm crying and, dealing with this? I don't need you to fix me. I just need you to know what's going on. And again, another instance of us taking responsibility, sharing where we're at and not needing anyone to fix us, but at the same time taking care of our relationships. So everyone knows what's happening, like in my family, if someone's upset, we talk about it and it's okay. And we all get like whatever that person needs is totally fine. And what they're going through is completely normal and appropriate and acceptable. And they get to be loved through that no matter what.
Right. Because what we don't want to do is damage our relationships while we're sitting with this, and then we have to go back and fix those. And then that's a whole other, And I find that, a lot of people struggle with the concept of like, well, so-and-so made me angry, and so therefore my behavior is excused, or my mother passed, and so therefore the fact that I yelled at my kids is excusable. And we're not saying that at all. We're saying both and. Like, sit with those big emotions, go through the process of grief, and you can also care for your relationships at the same time. And that is not easy. Like that, I'm also not saying this is easy, because this requires a level of awareness that is sometimes hard to get to.
Yeah, and also vulnerability, don't you think, Alyssa? Like that vulnerability to share what's actually happening with you with someone else. That's a learned skill. For most of us, we didn't grow up in households that, accepted that or promoted that or encouraged that.
Right.
And so it's a learned skill, but just like any other skill, you can learn how to navigate emotions and communicate effectively and honor your relationships and, you know, navigate life. Like you can learn all of these things.
Right. So was there a specific moment for you when you felt like some of these things kind of clicked? Like you realized nobody's coming to save me, like I got to figure this out. And what did that look like for you?
It's a really interesting question, Alyssa. And I have to say, the moment that that really all started clicking into place was when I started doing family constellation therapy. And why that's the case is because I realized the things that were causing me to react in certain ways were like all hidden in my family system as unprocessed trauma and still really affecting me. And so when that kind of came to the light and I could heal that and I started getting all of the love and the support that I needed through my family system, which is not like, you know, I'm not talking about in-person relationships. I'm talking about energetically through the energy of my parents, my higher aspect of my parents and all of my ancestors. When I started getting the energy and the support that I needed, everything changed. It was like that put me into the driver's seat immediately. And it was that turning point where, I don't know, just that greater understanding of why I am the way that I am, or why I was the way that I was, coupled with getting my emotional needs met, really unlocked that for me.
Yeah, that's so huge. Like, but that realization of like, this isn't going to come from anybody but me, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have to have my own back. That's one of the ways I like to say it is you have to have your own back. Like you have to get to a place where you realize this is on me to figure out what I need and get myself to that place.
This
right?
is such a great question, Alyssa. We could speak for a whole hour just on this question, I think. You know, one of the other turning points was when just thinking about this as you're speaking was when my daughter was born and I chose to start my business. And there was something in that decision where I realized like no one was going to hand me a job doing this healing work on a silver platter. Like no one was going to hand me a Donna Wallace business. Here you go. I've already set it up for you. Do you know? Like no one was going to do that except for me. And I had to actually take the steps, even though I didn't know how to do it. I had to take one step at a time to build that. But I think there comes a point in our lives, Alyssa, where we realize, like, actually, it's on us. Actually, we need to do something about it because ain't no one coming to save us.
No, and the next relationship, the next job, the next whatever it's not going to do it.
It's
it
not
never
the
will.
answer. No, it never will. And until you do that, like fulfill your own emotional needs, that's when those, dream relationships, dream jobs land because you don't need them. There's not that desperation or that desire for them to fill your cup. People can feel that. Yeah, and they're not going to give you the things that it's an icky dynamic in relationships when we're desperately trying to get something from other people.
Yes, and it very often has the opposite result of
Very
what we're really looking for. And we also attract, like when we're feeling desperate or we are, looking to have our needs met, oftentimes what that attracts is the opposite of what we really need as well.
It really is. It really is.
Health attracts health, right? Dysregulation attracts dysregulation. Like we tend to attract what we are. And I think I've noticed this lately being back in the dating game myself. Like I now being in a much more healed place than I was 20 years ago, attract a totally different type of person.
Yes.
And I also can spot very quickly the type of person that's right for me versus the type that's not. Whereas
That is so
when
awesome.
when I was dating 20 years ago, it was like I was open to anyone that would have me or that would pay attention to me. And so that's just one example of like how doing this work and being a healthier version, a healed version of yourself changes so much, right? Changes everything. Like now I feel like I'm completely in the driver's seat. I don't have to accept any man in my life who isn't right for me. And that's completely different from how it was 20 years ago. Like totally
That is
different.
such a beautiful example, Alyssa. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's powerful. That is life changing. And that's
Yes.
what doing this healing work is. It's life changing. I've had a couple of clients recently that have come to me with, again, same kind of things, like repeating patterns of within relationships, within intimate relationships, and they've just been so devastated, like that they can't find the right person, or that they've had multiple issues of the same kind of thing. And they have both said separately, of course, they don't know each other. To me, they've both said that they've got really good radars for red flags now. They know
Mm-hmm.
exactly what they're looking
Yes.
for and what they're not looking for. And they've got really great boundaries, like healthy boundaries about, like you said, what you'll accept or what you'll let into your life rather than you'll just let anyone in who'll have you. And
Right.
the other thing that they've both said to me is that the caliber of people that they've attracting or connecting with is much higher now than what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and it's really beautiful because that's the difference between having, Alyssa, let's be very honest, like that's the difference between having a relationship that might be abusive or, really challenging or, yeah, more of the same kind of old patterns compared to
Mm-hmm.
actually having a really healthy, loving relationship that you've always truly wanted.
Right. Right. And even, being able to express boundaries and enforce them
Yeah,
without fearing the other person's reaction, without fearing that they're going to leave, like now and this just it blows my mind. And this is very recent for me. I think this is why I'm bringing this up, but it blows my mind how much more confident I am. Like it's now when I meet someone,
yes.
one of the things I intentionally do is set a boundary or say no to something to see how they're going to react, right? Because that tells me so much about their level of health and their level of respect for boundaries and all of that. And I'm not afraid to do that now because I'm like, if I would rather know now where this person is at and if they are someone I want to allow into my life rather than find out the hard way later. But the old me would have been very afraid to do that. Like I would have been afraid
Yeah.
of their reaction or concerned that, they were just going to up and leave. And so just on a very practical level, doing this work really affects everyday life in so many ways.
It does.
So I'm curious what
Oh, can
you've
I just say
noticed.
something about that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Elisa, before you ask that question? To me, that really indicates that the healing that you've done has increased your sense of self-esteem. Like
Mm-hmm.
your self-esteem has improved so much, and this is one of the kind of beautiful benefits that happens along the way that people kind of don't notice until they're setting boundaries and not feeling bad about it anymore,
Yeah,
It's this
yeah,
awesome thing of your self-esteem building in the background, unbeknownst to you, really. And then it
yeah.
plays out in these ways, which is just so awesome. It's just so awesome. Sorry, I
It's
just want to
very
reflect that
empowering.
back.
No, you're so right. And just in the way that the negative things compound and sneak up on us, the positive things do too. Right. And I like to
Absolutely.
encourage people with that. Like when you're doing this work, especially at the beginning, it doesn't feel great most of the time, but good things are happening. Right. And you get to those points where you can look and go, I can see how much I have changed. I can see how much I have healed. I can see how much happier I am or how much healthier I am or whatever. But it does take some time sometimes to kind of wade into all of the muck and mire, and it can feel worse before it gets better sometimes.
Yeah,
Do you
I
find
find
that?
that's different. I find it's different with different of my clients in terms of what they experience. What I do see as a fairly common experience is people get a bit nervous at the beginning. Like, oh my gosh, what are we going to uncover? What's this going to do to me? Like, how, am I going to, change beyond knowing myself? It's actually, no, it's the opposite. You just become more of yourself. You just get to be all
Right.
of you, and you'll love that process. And yeah, I find more that people are just a little bit nervous at the beginning because it's sort of like opening up Pandora's box. You don't know what you're going to find, but it's actually
Right.
such a beautiful and easy process once you get into it.
Right.
Well,
Well,
easy. Is
you
easy
also,
the wrong word? I don't know.
I think easy
It's
is probably the wrong word, but it once you get into it, you start seeing how beneficial it is, and that makes it easier to
yeah.
keep doing the work.
It's the
So I'm
difference between
curious.
staying in something that is familiar and not good for you to moving in something that's
Right.
unfamiliar and very good for you. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
get comfortable with the uncomfortable, if you can just be okay with unfamiliarity for a while. So yeah, it's not easy, but that's the process. Is actually, this is between a difference between healthy, not healthy, and healthy, or comfortable and uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable for a while we're doing this,
Yeah,
and then you find that it becomes easier as you go.
that's really hard though, because our bodies are designed like we're wired to seek out comfort and safety, and so a lot of times we have to really fight that urge to like run back to safety initially, um,
We need
in order
both.
to really commit. Yeah.
We need both. We're
Um,
like toddlers, Alyssa. Like toddlers will go out in the world, they explore, and then they look back at their mums, knowing they're safe out there exploring, and then they'll run back to their mum for comfort. And toddlers go
mhm.
in and out like that, exploring and activating their nervous system, coming back in and regulating their nervous system with mum. We need both when we're doing our healing journey. So, if you that's why working with someone is so good, because they can support you and clear like the stuff that's coming up for you and bring you back into that regulated state, or teach you how to do that for yourself even better.
Mhm.
So yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like I keep interrupting you. You've got more questions.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was curious. I wanted to ask, we've talked about like the effects of healing on relationships, like romantic relationships and partnerships. But what have you noticed with your kids and your parenting? How has that sort of affected your relationship with your kids doing all this work?
Oh, it's changed everything, Alyssa. It's changed absolutely everything. Um, where do I start? When my
That's a
kids
big
have hit
question.
it's a big question. When my kids have hit particular ages, it's triggered stuff for me that happened at that age when I was that age. So it's been a deeply healing process from that perspective. Also, the things that I felt were missing for me have become in my childhood became a very high priority naturally in terms of my motherhood. So meeting my kids' emotional needs and making sure that I'm always there and I'm teaching them how to regulate themselves, and I'm validating what they're experiencing. I'm helping them understand what's coming up for them, and how to navigate life through an emotionally intelligent and regulated lens. You know, so it's informed the way that I mother so much. I share with them all the time about how I make mistakes and how we're always all just learning, and taking this path of even opening my business and pursuing that to me has been very obviously very empowering for me, Alyssa, but also I did it because like my why is my kids. I want my kids to see that they can have a career that is filled with purpose and love and creating something beautiful, making a ripple effect, a contribution in our community, and feeling really fulfilled by it. I want my kids to see that. I don't want to just tell them, like, you can do that, you can do whatever you want, you can be whatever you want, and then they've got two parents stuck in 9 to 5 jobs that, are stressed out and hate their work. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have that. My kids don't have that. What they have is, and their normal is two parents running their own businesses, both feeling fulfilled and in different. Our businesses are completely different, and us both expressing our gifts, if you like. So parenthood is very different for me. Like, my son had quite a traumatic thing that he witnessed at school yesterday. A couple of kids got hurt quite badly, complete accident. And when he got home, he was really shaken up by it. And I could feel, and, I could see in him and I could feel it in him. And the way that I supported him to navigate that was, it was so special, Alyssa, because I could see him shifting and I could see him dropping down in his body. I could see his nervous system relaxing. I could see his mind ticking over and trying to process what he'd witnessed. And every time we can do this with our kids, it is so deeply healing for us. Particularly for us kids growing up in households that didn't have that. It is deeply healing for our inner child to be able to mother in this way and to have this level of love and intimacy and open communication and trust and feeling safe and all the things. It's deeply profound and beautiful experience.
Yeah, and what a gift for your children to be able to grow up learning how to emotionally regulate and learning how to, all these things that you're talking about. So I just feel like so many of us didn't have that experience, and the way that you are setting your kids up for success in life, whatever that looks like, is really profound. Yeah.
Thank you.
Because they're going to have their own journey, right? But you wouldn't be able to teach them if you hadn't learned
absolutely
this stuff for yourself. And I feel like that kind of goes without saying, but I think it needs to be said because when we become parents, we pour everything we have into our kids, good and bad. And so when we do this healing work and we have health to pour into them, it completely changes the game because we're not pouring all this dysregulation and pain and things into them.
I love how you talk about it as health. Like, it's such a whole, even when you say the word, I can feel how holistic that is, that how you express that, how that feels for you. That's right, though. Like, the purpose, another one of my whys is that I don't want my kids to inherit all the same unprocessed trauma that I experienced or the effects of. Do you know? We are meant to be growing and evolving as a family, and B, a community, or like humanity. We're meant to be evolving. My kids are meant to be happier than I am. They're meant to be wealthier than I am. They're meant to be more fulfilled than I am. They're meant to be healthier, all the things. They're meant to have their own version of a perfect life. And that's what I want for them. I want them to have something that's richer and more beautiful and fulfilled than what I have. I can't even imagine that because I feel like, oh my gosh, this life is so amazing now, But what we want to do is do all of that healing so we're not passing on this gunk all the time. And then they can just take, and that's what I love about family constellation therapy, is that it allows us to take all of the good things that our parents and our ancestors have to offer us, and we can leave the rest behind. So again, as parents, we can give them all the good things and they can just leave the rest behind. It's fine. I know that I'm not perfect.
Yeah. I don't want it to take my kids 40 years to get to the place where I am now. Like, I can't even imagine what life could look like for them at 40 years if they're able to start from a place of health and a place of understanding, like without all of that trauma that we've been talking about. And the reason I asked you specifically about parenting is because I find that so often for so many of us, it's a big motivation to make changes and to work on ourselves in this healing, because we don't want to pass that on to our children. And
Absolutely.
And it also, I wanted to kind of paint that picture, because one of the things for me that was so much of a challenge was when I was going through a lot of healing from a really traumatic marriage. I struggled a lot with, like, how are my kids going to respond to this? Like, if mom's doing the dishes and starts crying, how is that going to affect them? Or if mom is really struggling and they eat cereal for dinner because I'm not getting out of bed, how is that going to affect them? And what I realized eventually is that it was more important that I get healthy than it was that I make dinner. It was more important for them that I get healthy than that they never see me cry, right? Because big picture, it doesn't matter if they eat cereal for dinner because mom is struggling. What matters most big picture for them is that mom gets healthy and is passing on those skills and that experience, those feelings that come from, of safety and connection and things that they can get from me now that they couldn't get when I was in the midst of all of this traumatic stuff. And so I wanted to really paint that picture and encourage parents that, your kids are going to be fine watching you do this work. And in fact, they're going to be better than fine because you're doing this work, and I don't think it really traumatizes kids to see that mom is working on stuff or that dad is working on stuff. I think it actually is the opposite. It can traumatize them if they see us just not dealing with the things that we need to be dealing with and not getting healthy. It doesn't do them any favors. And so I love what you said there, and especially about the experience of being able to help your son deal with and process what happened at school. I think that's such a great example of how it affects everyone around us when we are healthy. And when we're well, we can pass that on. We just can't pass on what we don't have.
No, if we're not emotionally regulated, we can't offer that to our children, and we can't teach them by osmosis how to do it.
Right.
Alyssa, I just want to pause and acknowledge, like, you share some really vulnerable and beautiful, you're so open in what you share in this podcast, and it's one of the things as to why I reached out to you. And I just want to acknowledge that, because it takes something to be that level of open on a public forum. And I just, when you share such personal examples, it paints such a great picture. And I think that you're right. I think that you're absolutely right. Your kids are going to be much more okay when you're honest about you're not coping at the moment, or you're processing whatever you're feeling, rather than saying, no, I'm fine, and they can feel it. What happens when our kids are told to ignore their feeling state, aka intuition, is that they start second guessing themselves and not believing what they're feeling and picking up on. So when we can honor what we're going through, not only is it, as I said, role modeling, and it's teaching them how to navigate their own big emotions by osmosis. They're watching it, they're feeling it, they're picking it up, they're seeing it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it also teaches them that what they're feeling is accurate and their perceptions are accurate. It builds confidence and trust within their own system. And ultimately, I think what our kids want is for their parents to be happy. I think that's all kids want. Because when mum and dad are happy, or whatever version of your family it is, mum and mum, or, whatever you've got going on, it's all good. They just want happy parents, because when parents are happy, kids are happy.
Right.
Yes, when parents feel safe, kids feel safe. When parents are having fun, so are kids. When parents are stressed out, so are kids. So the more we can be honest and transparent in sharing the processes that we go through, the more they just learn that this is how you do life. And they won't have that cumulative effect of all the lemons that they're getting dished up by life. In fact, they'll be like, oh, that happened. I know how to deal with that now. Like, I remember when, that thing happened at school and mum sat with me and this is how I felt and how I, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So,
yes, because if we can keep them from experiencing that cumulative effect, it keeps them from getting buried under it the way that so many of us, have felt.
Yeah.
And I just, I've had a couple of people say to me through coaches and therapists and everything through all of this journey, like, it's so important to realize your kids know anyway. Like,
they totally do.
They totally do. Like, you might think you're hiding from them what you're experiencing, but you're not. Like, so it's so much better to just be honest with them and say, look, I'm struggling today. Tonight we're eating cereal because mommy had to take a nap, or mommy, whatever. There's a level of oversharing that we have to avoid, but the reality is they know anyway. And so being honest with them and taking them with us sort of on that journey and allowing them to see what it looks like to walk down these roads and deal with these things is so much healthier for them than just trying to cover it up.
Absolutely, because they're, children, their predominant state of operating is through their feeling system. So it's not thinking like most adults are in. And so you can't tell someone and them not, like you said. But also, Alyssa, there was something else I wanted to say and I just lost it. Oh yeah, I got it. I got it.
Okay, perfect.
It appeared again. There is something about being... A friend of mine told me this, and I think she got this from the circle of security work. And she said, as a parent, you're bigger, wiser, kinder, and stronger. That's your job. Always to be bigger, wiser, kinder, and stronger. And that has held me in the best stead for all of my parenting years since I heard that, which was over 8 years ago. It means that we share appropriate information with the kids. We're not relying on them to fix us. We don't need them to fix us. We're bigger, we're wiser, we're kinder, we're stronger. We're absolutely capable of dealing with our own issues. They don't need to pick them up and carry them for us. We're the ones that are meant to be giving to our kids. And so when that role reversal happens, that's problems, dynamics in the family that needs to be fixed.
Right, absolutely. All right. So tell me, for somebody who's listening and they're thinking, well, I wonder if working with Donna is right for me. I wonder if that would be a good next step for me. How would someone identify themselves as being the person that needs to come find you and do some healing work?
I think a couple of things that I said earlier, Alyssa, are those two threads, which is you've identified that there are some repeating patterns and or you just know that there's something else available to you. You don't know how to get there. So, and that's what I help with. I help with the how. And I know how to get you from A to B, and I create game plans with people when we have a chat, a personalized game plan that gets you from A to B on your healing journey so you can start to have the experiences that you want in your life. So that's what I do on a free call with me, is we go to that level of detail in terms of creating that personalized game plan. Yeah.
Oh, great. And your website is donnawallace.com.au. Right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Perfect. So tell us about the 5-minute morning meditations that people can go. There will be a link in the podcast notes to this, but I want you to kind of give people a little insight on what it is and why they should go and grab that.
Okay. So I created this 5-minute life-changing morning meditation because I'm lazy. No, I'm lazy and I don't like 3 hour, 20-step morning rituals and routines. I don't think it's necessary. But what I do is I connect with Source and Mother Earth every day, and I open up use that light to clear myself and to get really grounded and to connect in. And I thought, why don't I just create this as a gift for people? Because, if you do it, say, every day for 3 weeks, you'll know exactly how to do it. And then you can just do it anytime without having to listen to the actual meditation. So that's what my meditation is. It's my own daily practice that I do, and I just wanted to share that with people. I think that it's effective, and it can actually change your life. Even though it's a free little 5-minute meditation, it can actually change your life. So that's my gift to all of your listeners, Alyssa.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to put links to Donna's website, to that meditation, and all of her social media in the podcast notes. So go and look her up and connect with her. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today and record this episode with me.
Thank you so much for having me, Alyssa.
All right. Well, have a wonderful week. Join me next week for another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. If you would like to learn more about the podcast, visit www.coachingwithalyssa.com/podcast. And while you're there, book your free consultation and download the preview of my new book, Marriage is Hard and Other Lies I Believed. I'll see you in the next episode.